Welcome, everybody. I am thrilled to introduce our speaker tonight, Beth Allison. Beth is a former executive director of 5 summer camps in Ontario, Canada. Whoop, whoop to Canada. Co-owner of the Camp Hacker and one of the founders of Camp Go Pro. Beth is currently a consultant, author, trainer, and one of the hosts of Camp Code, a podcast dedicated to leadership training. Here to discuss everything is harder in a pandemic, including staff morale, is Beth Allison. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and so nice to see so many faces. Here in Ontario, our COVID numbers are starting to go up, so I'm seeing less and less people. So it's lovely to see so many of your faces tonight. And thank you to Tyler and to Brian and all the folks at COCA for inviting me to participate tonight. I'm really excited to get going. So I'm going to start screen sharing now so that yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tyler. So we'll do this part. This is the awkward part we get to do when we're not in person. So we'll just do that. Okay. I think we are ready. So are you excited to talk about staff morale? Because I know that I am. It's not moving. 1 second, I'm just having trouble moving my slides. There we go. So this is Chris Hadfield, and he is the very first Canadian to walk in space. And he is famous for this quote: "Ultimately, leadership is not about glorious crowning acts. It's about keeping our team focused on a goal and motivated to do their best to achieve it, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences really matter." And we are a group of people who firmly believes that summer camp really matters. So with all of us in this industry dreaming of and dedicated to giving our staff and of course our campers nothing but positive life-changing experiences, why is this not just super easy? What can get in our way? So in the chat for me now, would you please help me with what we call a chat waterfall? So it's one-word answers, and you may certainly post more than one time. But I'd like to know some of the issues that you have faced at camp with your staff, and perhaps specifically with staff morale. So I'll give you a moment to just let those come into the chat there. I want you to think about issues that have really made you struggle, or ones that keep surfacing that make your job and your staff's lives difficult, sometimes utterly miserable. And as I can see, none of you had any trouble sort of filling these in. So we've got lots of things coming on. Zoom burnout, absolutely. Negativity, participation, routine, entitlement, resistance to change, yes. Retention with your staff, fatigue, time, entitlement. Yeah, look at all these things that we're putting in here. A lot of some of the same. Clicks or clicking, as you would say in the States. In Canada, we would say cliquing. It's a little of our French heritage coming in there. Availability, complacency, great. Thank you so much for putting those in, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that kind of stuff with us. So although we cannot make all of these problems simply disappear by wishing it so, what I hope I can do for you tonight is to really inspire you to focus your energy this year on being the most intentional you've ever been prior to, during staff training, and throughout the camp experience. 2020 has been quite the year, and our staff are likely even more stressed than ever before. So if we can spend the time now being incredibly intentional, then we can eliminate many of the concerns and offer ways to set your staff up for success when not everything goes according to plan, when they don't see eye to eye with one another, or when they are starting to feel that inevitable burnout. For me, keeping our staff morale is all about being proactive and not just reactive. It's about creating that kind of environment that keeps your staff feeling supported and valued. So here's the deal. I am going to be throwing a whole lot of information at you over the next 40 minutes or so, and then I'm going to offer you some time to ask questions, and I'm going to encourage you to do some homework in the coming days. So I'd like us to spend our time together tonight on things that don't necessarily seem practical, but for me, they are the single most important things that you need to focus on during your staff training, and of course throughout your program, in order to encourage and develop your very best year of staff morale ever. So tonight, we're going to meet at the heart level, because for solid staff morale, we need to give people something to believe in, not just something to do. So here's why all of this is so important. Each one of us has the inherent desire to belong and to be an important part of something greater than ourselves. There's a growing body of research that shows us that the need to connect socially with others is as basic as our need for food and water and shelter. UCLA professor Matthew Lieberman tells us that our brains are wired to connect, that it's been baked into our operating systems for tens of millions of years. Being socially connected is our brain's lifelong passion. We are social creatures. Yep, we can get information from our computers, from our iPads, from our phones, but we get inspiration and a sense of community from other human beings. Two really important qualities for exceptional staff attitude and spirit. And even when we're dealing with this online in virtual programming, we still need to make these efforts to really connect as human beings the best way that we can. The brilliant Brene Brown tells us that connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen and heard and valued. So how are we going to make sure that our people feel seen and heard and valued during training, throughout our program, and throughout the entire year? We all need to create a place where people feel like they belong, where they feel connected. So let's dig in. We need to design an environment that encourages our people to take the time to understand one another, to share our stories and our experiences, so that we can then connect, to work together, to learn from one another and support each other. And when we understand and we connect, that is what leads to inspiring other people to do the same. So let's create for them this environment. Let's build them that home that will create the kind of strong and vibrant community in which your staff will thrive. 2020 has brought us countless challenges, and it seems like more than almost any other year. But for me, if we have a solid community with laser-focused intentionality, we can handle anything life throws our way, pandemic or not. Let's think about building a solid and supportive community in terms of building a house. So I want to start with the foundation of your home. It's what everything else is built on. And if your foundation isn't solid, well, we all know the rest. So creating a circle of safety builds a solid foundation, an environment in which people will feel welcomed and belong, a part of something truly special. And if we get this environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do remarkable things, and more important, others in our care have that capacity too. The two most important components to a healthy and thriving environment are trust and cooperation. Problem is, they are feelings, they're not instructions. So you can't say to your staff, trust me, and they will. You can't tell two of your staff to cooperate, and they will. So how do we deal with this? It's when we feel safe that there's trust and cooperation. And if the conditions are wrong, we are forced to expend our own time and energy to protect ourselves from each other. And that weakens our staff team. And we've all seen it. Some of you even talked about it in some of your chat answers. But when people feel safe, we naturally combine our talents and our strengths, and we work tirelessly to face the dangers outside the circle and seize the opportunities. We're more willing to take risks, to experiment, which we know requires failure, and to explore with the confidence that if we fail, those within our community will pick us up when we fall, and they'll help us when we're hurt. Google describes it this way: In a team with high psychological safety, teammates feel safe to take risks around their team members. They feel confident that no one on the team will embarrass or punish anyone else for admitting a mistake or asking a question or offering a new idea. In other words, great teams thrive on trust. So we need to be really intentional. We need to create that foundation of trust and cooperation where everybody feels valued and affirmed and important. And we need to talk about it. We need to work on it. We need to put it out there and have discussions. We need to come back to it every day, every evening as we close our time, and every morning when we get started. We cannot assume that our staff are just going to pick it all up by osmosis or because we're just really nice people. We need to build a foundation for healthy staff morale intentionally. And to offer the most meaningful experiences that we can, we need to put into place intentional systems and supports and rituals. And I have a few ideas here to get you started. First, I strongly recommend that in the coming weeks, you determine your own why for running a COCA camp. And this is part of your homework that I was talking about earlier. So take a few minutes to write yours down, either tonight or tomorrow or in the next few days. But I want you to really think it through. It's a great exercise to do and review every year because it can change. And this becomes your own personal mission statement. It'll help you as you prepare for camp and during those hectic, crazy, stressful times during camp to stop, breathe, and remember why you started all of this in the first place. And by doing it now, you're prepared to share it with your staff during training, maybe at the end of your first day, or at the end of a campfire if you have a campfire time, or online before camp even starts, whatever makes most sense to you and your staff. Letting them know and letting them get to know you and understand your why helps to build that foundation. You might even want to create a short video of you explaining it, and you could send it out to them before they arrive or maybe when they're hired. However you do it, they need to hear it. And it's also an excellent activity to do with your staff before the campers arrive. So get them to verbalize their why. Why are they working at camp this year? What's their purpose? What's their cause? Give them time to do it on their own, have them share it with a partner, and then plaster it all over the walls at camp for parents and campers to see when they arrive. And maybe it's something you can have them do before they get to camp and send it to you so that you can post it as a surprise for their arrival at camp. Or you could have them creatively do it and bring it with them and then post it. It'll make them think, it'll help them understand what you're looking for, it'll help them focus on their purpose, and it'll be something that you can circle back throughout camp if they're getting off track. So here is my second component for your circle of safety. So that all of our people feel safe, we need to create boundaries within which, of course, they have lots of freedom and room to grow. So here is what my husband and I created at our camp. And these are 4 questions that helped us to quantify our circle of safety. And these are the 4 S's: safety, stewardship, servanthood, and self-esteem. So safety, is it physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually safe? Stewardship, are you being a good steward of the earth and all the resources you've been given, which includes your time? Servanthood, are you serving other people and the community with your words and with your actions? And self-esteem, are you building someone's self-esteem with your words and with your actions? So all of our staff, our campers, our volunteers, everyone who comes on site and any of our virtual online programs has to answer yes to all 4 questions before they can do an activity or sing a song or speak words to anyone. And if they can't answer yes to all 4 questions, then they can't do the activity. They have to figure out how to reframe things to make it a more positive experience. And the 4 S's have proved to be an outstanding way for us to empower our staff and campers to make really good decisions on their own without us watching over them all the time. So you are welcome to use our 4S test. I give it to you freely, But I will tell you that one of the best ways to ensure a positive and supportive community, which is crucial for great staff morale, is to define and implement them every day in every activity, always, even when the campers are not present. So there's no time at our camp, any time of the year, that is not governed by the 4 S's. And I've had the privilege of visiting many camps, and some of the camps, when the kids are present, the staff are amazing and they treat everyone with respect and dignity and care. But when the campers leave and it's just the staff, the behavior expectations have become lax and they just don't uphold one another to that same code. And this is where staff community begins to fall apart and where cracks in morale can appear. We have all experienced this shift in staff in the last decade or so, in which they have just much higher anxiety and stress, and they're often afraid to be anything less than perfect. And often it keeps them from trying new things at all. So in order for them to feel safe and ready to risk, how about we talk to them about making mistakes? So help them learn to honor mistakes, or as we say on our podcast for camp training, mistakes. And I just encourage you to really help them learn to honor these. So an idea would be to ask each night of training or throughout your program or whenever you have time for staff to be together, who made a mistake today? And of course, you will need to go first on the very first night or very first afternoon that you do this and share a mistake that you made. And I did this with my staff the very first time I introduced this idea. And I chose not to share one I had made that day, but I chose to share a really big mistake that I made as a camp director. And they were shocked, not only that I had made the mistake, but also that I was willing to tell them about it. And then I shared what I had learned from making it. So each night or at the end of each day, and when you ask who made a mistake, and I would prep a few more senior staff ahead of time to be ready those first couple of nights or first couple end of days or those first couple of online trainings, just in case nobody else wants to share. But don't forget to ask them then, what did you learn from the mistake? And let them know that it's okay to say, I don't know yet. This is a time to honor, and yes, I'm Canadian, so for you, my American friends, honor their vulnerability, their honesty, and to thank the mistake for teaching us something, even if we don't know what that is yet. So this nightly or end of day ritual will help them to see that making mistakes are the way that we learn, and we value that very much, knowing that mistakes are expected and that it's part of learning, and that they don't need to feel so down on themselves when they make one, will go a long way in helping with their morale. Okay, so back to the house. So for me, there are 4 essentials to creating a solid community in any organization. 4 walls, you might say. And these walls will help protect and guard your positive staff morale. And the first, it's very simple, but it's kindness. We need to tell and show our people that they are worthy of love and belonging. It sounds so simple, almost too simple, but promoting and creating an atmosphere of kindness takes some real thought and effort. We need to make caring for others a priority in all of our programs. Campers, of course, need to hear from us that caring for others is a top priority. And in order for this to happen, the staff need to hear this from us first. And there are so many ways to be intentional about it. And I find that if we can start with staff and allow them to truly experience strong and intentional community, they will want nothing more for their campers than to experience it too. Now, I know you folks already have all kinds of things in your programs that do an amazing job of incorporating kindness, but tonight I'm just going to give you a few of my ideas and hopefully inspire you to come up with new ways to add it to your program. So just a few simple ideas that can make a world of difference. During training, secretly assign a returning staff member to watch over a new person, not only during training, but throughout your whole camp program. So have them check in with them to see how they're doing, hang out with them in free time, make sure they have a partner in an activity, but the goal is to keep this a secret. So our new staff members never knew they had a guardian angel until they became one in returning years. You can also pair all your staff members together with somebody else of an appropriate age and interests, and make them wellness partners. We used to call ours wellies, and we had the same wellies for the entire length of the camp program. So for us, all summer long. And we had them take care of and watch out for one another. Have each partner agree to allow this person to tell them when they need sleep or to take better care of themselves, or to say, you know, you have your cranky pants on today, or encourage them to talk together and watch out for each other. You need to allow some time in your staff meetings every so often for them just to sit down and catch up, like 10 minutes. I still see happy birthday welly messages on Facebook and Instagram from staff who were wellies with one another over 10 years ago. It is a really great connection. GMICs are great moments in camping. So at the end of your week, or at the end of your day, if you only have a week-long program, do it every day, have staff members share their GMICs. Have them either do it before they head to bed, or if you're doing a day camp type program, whenever they get to meet together. And these include recognition for going the extra mile, recognition for building people's self-esteem, and for putting other people first. So we try to avoid funny stories about things that may have happened on a day off, but instead we focus on those amazing moments that staff have had with each other and with our campers. And as each one is shared, a book is passed around. And so if you're doing virtual programming, you have to figure out a way that you can record these. And staff members are asked to record their GMICs in our book. And it's also a really powerful activity you can transfer to do with campers. It's a really audio and visual way to show your people that you value taking care of each other. We have had our book since 1997, and it is still going strong. And each year, a different staff person designs a cover page for that particular year. And alumni are now returning to camp to drop off their kids and asking to see the GMIC book that they wrote in 20 years ago. So now that you have folks living in a circle of safety and feeling loved and like they belong, you can now encourage them to get to give back. So I am a huge fan of acronyms, and I created just a really super quick and easy program to help staff and campers give. You are welcome to take this if you like, but what I really want is for you to be able and to be inspired to create something that you will do every day at your camp that will develop that feeling of giving, that feeling of putting other people first. And remember, you don't have to be the one who creates these little additions to your training or to your summer programs. Your staff are great resources for these kinds of ideas. But beginning these when you're training your staff gets staff in the habit, and it's just easier to get campers on board later. So this is my outline for a 5-minute or less 4-step process. So my acronym is GIVE. So G is generate a list of people that you can give things to or do things for. So things like, depending on your situation, maybe they can help kitchen staff unload the food truck, or maybe they can help lifeguards pick up toys or towels that have been left on the pool deck, whatever you can think of. And when you have that list, there are 3 more steps. So the second step is anyone being left out. We tend to give to people that we know really well, that we're comfortable around, or that we really like. So who are we missing? And there's so many people who work at camp who do work behind the scenes that we don't see, and we tend to get our staff and we need to get our staff and campers thinking of all of these people. V is to visualize their happiness. How will it make that other person feel to receive the gift that you'll be giving? And get your folks to sit down and just take a few moments to think about that. It's really great practice for when you do this with your campers. And E is the most important piece for me, and it's ego let go. So what we need to be sure we do is that we don't need to have people know we've done something kind. I think that a lot of us get caught up in that, myself included, and it's hard not to want to have other people think well of you. But of course, this is not the point of the exercise. So I would suggest that if you use the GIVE program, that you give your staff time every day during training to fill in that list and to think about everything under I, V, and E, and you may want to put them in little small groups to do this, and then change those groups up every day, and then debrief at the end of training how it made them feel. go over with them that it doesn't have to be big stuff. It can be holding open the doors for lunch, or helping someone clean up after an activity, or writing a really quick note of encouragement. It just has to be seen as truly important by owning its own time in your schedule and being consistent throughout camp. So maybe you do it every day after breakfast. And I'm not just making the importance of this stuff up. According to scientific research, when somebody performs an act of kindness, they're very likely to inspire others to do the same. But also, it reduces social anxiety and social avoidance. It lowers blood pressure. Doing kind acts creates emotional connections, which releases the hormone oxytocin, which expands blood vessels. Your overall positive mood will increase. Oxytocin is released oxytocin released is linked to increased optimism and to self-esteem, and your gut will even be healthier. So oxytocin, of course, can cool down gastrointestinal inflammation. So make kindness part of every moment of every day, and you will be amazed at how this changes things. It is not rocket science. It just happens to be more important than rocket science. So let's move on to another wall of our home. In order to build a community that's solid and true, we need to work on teaching empathy. Not just teaching or talking about it, but offering opportunities to practice. And empathy can be hard, but it's an incredibly important skill that we have the opportunity to work on and practice at summer camps. And it begins by creating opportunities for it when you are having those leadership training times and teaching your staff how to make it a part of who they are. So I have no doubt that your staff are great at having empathy with their campers, but if we're intentionally working hard to conquer any morale problems, we need for them to have empathy with each other too. So I have 3 resources for you. So this is the first one, and Scott Arizala and Laura Kriegel have created this really great 3-minute video to show to staff and campers the skills that we need to practice in order to be more empathetic to one another and to create a safer, more powerful community. And when I asked them, they were happy to give me permission to give it to you. So you can find it on YouTube simply by searching for empathy video and Scott Arizala. But if you forget Scott's name, if you search for empathy video and you see this particular drawing, you will know. Brene Brown does a great little 2.5-minute video on the difference between empathy and sympathy, and it can also be found on YouTube. And she also has a TED Talk entitled The Power of Vulnerability that talks about our ability to empathize, belong, and love that you may want your staff to watch before they get to camp or before they start working with your kids. My camp participates each summer in what we call the Empathy Project. And it was the brainchild of one of our staff members. She was a teacher at the time of 6th grade students in Toronto. And she created it to help them overcome their sense of entitlement and to be able to put themselves in one another's shoes. And after only a few months, she saw incredible positive change in her students' behavior toward one another. So at camp, we choose 3 projects every summer that our camp donates time, efforts, and funds to. So we choose a local one, we choose a provincial one because we're in Canada, and one international one. And every week, each new session of campers sees a presentation on the Empathy Project and participates in some way helping during their stay. And one of my very favorite memories is having a cabin of 8-year-old boys ask if they could give up time at the climbing wall so that they could finish knitting scarves that they were making for the homeless. And our families are also educated and encouraged to participate throughout the year. So being intentional about teaching empathy and talking about it and pointing it out when we see it during training will create people who genuinely seek to understand and care for others. And in our culture, where much of life is on our devices, our staff just need that time in a safe and brave environment to practice these skills. Gratitude is such a big part of what I talk about in building healthy staff morale. And the benefits of practicing gratitude are nearly endless. The studies show that people who regularly practice gratitude by taking time to notice and reflect upon the things they're thankful for experience more positive emotions. It actually shields you from negativity. You feel more alive, So research is showing us that it makes us at least 25% happier. It helps us to sleep better because it rewires our brains. It expresses more compassion and kindness and helps to eliminate stress. It heals, it boosts self-esteem and performance, and it even gives us stronger immune systems. So that sounds exactly what I would want from any of my staff. So the best way to reap the benefits of gratitude is to notice new things you're grateful for every day. So during training, why not have your staff write in gratitude journals or create a gratitude jar and then schedule a time each day, and this is the key point, to fill things out on paper, put them in the jar, and then make sure somebody reads them aloud at the end of the day. And of course, this is also something counselors or staff can do with their campers, so you're really instilling great habits in your staff. I began journaling with my staff in one of my very first years of directing, and I gave each person a small book of their own in which to record every day 5 things for which they're grateful. And these things I asked that they pertain to that particular day, and I encouraged them to be really specific. And then I had them record 3 things that they did for that day that they were proud of. And this was always a much harder request, but I asked them to do it every day. And then 1 goal for the following day. And if they were having a difficult week or getting grumpy with each other, I had them sit quietly and read all the things that they had written in their own journals. And I could literally see the mood change in that circle of people. They focused on what they were grateful for and not all the crappy stuff. And it was so impressive how well it worked. The key again is to build in time every day to do this. So it could be done during your daily meetings or at the end of a meal, whatever works in your situation. If you have cabin groups of kids, they can do that together at the end of their day. And then at the end of every evening during training, we had fireside chats. Now, you don't have to have a campfire to do these, but whenever you wrap up for the day, ask your staff a different question each day, like, who do you have to thank today and why? Or who did you see take a risk today? Or who did you see taking care of others? Or who did you see who really grew today? We were emphasizing our mission, our why, by giving examples of who we saw following our mission. And we were building community by having staff members recognize one another for their efforts. It was incredibly powerful. And having them answer these kinds of questions aloud creates opportunities for them to be publicly grateful and publicly acknowledged or thanked. And this goes a long way to creating a community of gratitude. We know that gratitude involves connecting with others and taking their perspective. It helps avoid toxic bouts of envy, and it helps people develop grit and resiliency. So create opportunities for them to see and hear and feel how much they're appreciated and valued. And of course, our counselors then ask these same kinds of questions each night before their campers went to sleep. And if you run a day camp type program, it can be done before they head home each day. And if you've been counting, we have 1 wall left. So we can be kind, we can teach empathy and practice gratitude. But in order for our community to be strong and to last, we have to inspire, empower, and leave our legacy. So I've got a few ideas to help you do that. One of the greatest things we ever did was introduce the concept of leadership training. It is nothing new, but like anything else, it had to have a focus in our training, not just for the week or the 10 days that we did training, but the entire year. It needs to be given its due, and it requires you to get the input of your staff to get them on board. So I've got a really quick but meaningful visual exercise for you to get that conversation going. So ask your group to help you generate a really quick organizational chart and draw it out for them as they explain it to you. So yours may look something like this. You might have COCA or maybe the ACA, and then your state organization or your province or your parent organization, maybe a board or an owner, a director, leadership team, counselors, LITs, campers, clients at the bottom. But get a general consensus that this is how this power structure works, and talk about why this is effective at your camp, and talk about when this is effective at your camp. And there will be times that it is. So get the input of your staff. And now here's how to describe servant leadership to them. I want you to take that piece of paper or that flip chart or whatever you've got going and flip the chart upside down. And it naturally flows then that COCA and the directors and the assistant director and the senior staff are there to serve those that they supervise. So more like this, or as I like to encourage my staff, like this. The people above you, when we flip the chart upside down, are the people in your care. They're in your hands, and it's your job to understand that everything exists to make the people you care for successful, and that every level works to equip and support and clear obstacles for the group above them. Now talk about why this is an effective way to think about camp. True servant leaders create a space where everybody knows they're cared for, where everybody understands who supports them, who cares for them, who's there for them. And it creates that atmosphere and understanding that we're in this together, and that we not only have folks who care for us, but we have the privilege of looking after those in our care. It's how we care for our people, and it's how we get the best from our people. There is a ton of information out there on servant leadership. It's all over the internet, and you can download it for free if it's something that you want to dig into. Connecting with your people all year round will make a huge difference in helping them to feel like they're being seen and heard and valued. So I encourage you now to take some time to create a staffing calendar, to get your seasonal staff fully invested in your camp's purpose and mission, and to get them involved in helping you to market camp or market the positions that are available. I want you to start to think about the things that you can send out every week of every month of every year. So it doesn't have to be big stuff. It could be an email. It could be an Instagram post. It could be a super short video of you saying how much you miss them. You could put a handwritten card in the mail, or a link to an article, or a podcast, or a TED Talk that you think they might find interesting and helpful to doing their job or for their own self-care. So ask questions and ask them to answer creatively, like, what are you going to do to make a positive difference in the world right now? Ask permission to post these creative answers on your website. And other weeks you can request them to write a blog post or create a hashtag on one of their favorite camp photos, or their own video sharing the importance of camp to them or how much they miss their campers, and send them to you to post. Brainstorm your ideas, put them in an order that makes sense in terms of your camp's calendar year, and connect, communicate, and help your staff commit to your mission. And by sharing all of the amazing good that you folks and your staff do in the world all year round, you're helping your staff to feel a part of something really important and bigger than themselves. And this attitude helps to deliver that mission of camp. It actually attracts staff who are truly there to give back and to change the world for the better. And it gets staff to really focus on what they want to give to camp. I would also highly recommend doing a session with your staff on legacy. So I've developed one that I've done now with quite a few camps, and it seems to work exceptionally well. And the link is here, but I have also given it out to you. So I understand that you should already have it with this presentation. And it's about an hour, and it allows staff time to focus on something much bigger than themselves. It helps them to put their time at camp into the grander scheme of things, and it creates an opportunity for them to develop a respect for the past and those who have gone before, and to truly reflect on the kind of legacy that they would like to leave when their time working at camp is done. And having this kind of truly intentional time to focus on what they give to camp and how they wish to be remembered, really further strengthens that sense of purpose. Alumni letters became a part of our tradition years ago. So I invited staff members whose last year was the summer before to write a letter to the staff of the current year. And for us during training, it's read at the very end of campfire each night, but you could do it whenever your day ends together. And for us, every letter comes out of a very special velvet box. It's just for that purpose. And my favorite part is listening to the staff whisper to each other as they try to figure out who wrote it before the letter's actually finished. There are often some tears and always lots of laughter as memories are recounted. And it's an incredibly powerful experience to listen to their advice, to hear how important camp was and still is to them. And it allows them to send their love to those who are going to be on staff this year. It is without question one of our staff's favorite times during training. This is one way in which our alumni then pass the torch to that next generation of staff and how they inspire them to keep it burning brightly. It's a time they feel truly seen and truly valued. And it's one tangible way that our alumni get to leave their legacy. So just a few methods, but be sure that you create countless opportunities to inspire them, challenge them to dare greatly, to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And this could also be something you ask your leadership team to be in charge of finding and asking the right people and creating positive rituals that will take place every evening of training or as you're naturally reflecting together on your day. So one last little tip before I finish off. The top of the house, your roof, is 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 your communication piece. So it's great to have a community that's solid, but you're really missing out on it if you're not focusing on the importance of communication. So communication is so important to a great community. You want to make sure everybody on staff knows why you do what you do, what your mission is and why, and be sure that you set your expectations before anybody ever arrives at your door. And this is called front loading. I am a huge fan of front loading everything so that things go as smoothly as possible and so that staff and campers can get the best of each and every moment. So during staff training, for example, this means that I have to be prepared. I have to think through my goals for training as a whole or for each individual session that I'm leading or for sessions that others are leading, and then try to foresee any issues that could arise. So I'll give you an example. During trainings, front loading could sound like this. This session may be a bit uncomfortable to talk about, but it's really important. So thank you in advance for handling it with maturity and sensitivity. Or your camp experience will be one of the hardest things you've ever done, but it will also be one of the most rewarding. The times might get tough, and we've got all kinds of support here to help you get through it. There will be days when you may even want to throw in the towel, and here's what you can do when you feel this way. I want you to notice I didn't say if you feel this way, but I front loaded with my people that this job will be hard, but we'll get through it together, and here's how. Front loading happens when you begin at the end and when you think things through. So if we can front load as much as possible, we can help staff to make the best decisions, arrive prepared, understand what we need and want from them, and it lets them know that we care. So it not only gives training a better flow and teaches staff how to front load with their campers, which is an invaluable skill, but front loading also makes clear to them your expectations, what to do when something goes wrong, when the support systems that you have put in place for them, and the chain of communication for when things go awry, when the staff are struggling after a hard day, or when they have a concern. You're giving all of them all of this up front and letting them practice. For example, running through how an evaluation will work or what it will look like if they have an issue that they need to discuss and it's sensitive and uncomfortable and scary. And by front loading, you're taking the time to communicate what's important to your community. You're also communicating these important messages ahead of time, like on your website, in your staff welcome package, or your staff letter after they're hired. Communicating your message throughout the year in all your social media and your contact with your staff and your campers and your family and your donors and your neighbors allows everybody to understand your purpose and your mission, and it makes people want to be a part of something so special. So, quick review. For a strong and welcoming community, which supports staff and a healthy staff morale, you need to have a solid foundation, a circle of safety, fully understanding and embracing your why, boundaries like the 4 S's, a culture of embracing mistakes to make people feel safe, your 4 walls, set up intentional ways for everybody to be kind. Ask your staff to help you create new positive rituals. You don't have to do this on your own. You know you have people on your staff right now who live for this kind of stuff. You want to teach empathy and practice it with them and catch them doing it right. You want to make time each day to be grateful and to celebrate the joy. You want to inspire and empower them so that they want to leave a valuable legacy. And you want to include at least one of these 4 components in every part of training, not just every session, but every song, every game, every skit, every announcement, and of course, every part of your day with your campers. And then you're going to put on your roof and communicate all of these lessons to your people, front load and talk about why you do, what you will do, and how you will do it. So before I answer any questions, I want to give you some homework. So please take your leadership training schedule from last year, obviously not right now, but later on, or the last year that you were able to run camp in person, and put it up against the 4 S's: safety, servanthood, stewardship, self-esteem. Does every single moment of camp measure up? Can you answer yes to all 4 questions with all of your activities, big or small? If not, what do you need to change? And how can you reframe things in a positive way? This, by the way, is an excellent activity I would encourage you to do with your leadership team or your senior staff before camp even starts. Sit down together and take a look at your entire daily schedule, maybe both for leadership training, for your camp schedule, for your year-round programming. Are there times that are not so popular with campers or with staff, with parents and families, with volunteers, with support staff, kitchen, maintenance, your medical staff? Get the input of everybody on your leadership team and then take those times and decide what changes you may need to make to build a stronger, safer community. And your second piece of homework is looking at the 4 walls of community building. What can you add to camp this year that will incorporate each one at least once every day? Kindness, empathy, gratitude and joy, inspiration, and legacy. If we want to help our people to have the best summer experience possible, especially when they're working so hard to give kids an amazing experience, we need to keep morale high. It's the only way it's going to work. And we know that relationships are the agent of change, so we want to create as many opportunities as possible to help build really positive and empowering relationships. So don't spend your camp experience trying to fix little issues with staff as they occur. Set them right up from the beginning, intentionally creating a community where everybody feels connected and seen and heard and valued. And you will see an incredible difference in not only how prepared your staff are to give the best of themselves, but also to support one another and yearn to be a part of this incredible special thing that you've created together. Being wanted feeds the ego, being valued feeds the soul. So that's what we want to do for our people. So I thank you so much for all of your time and for your attention. And I'm happy now, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
If you do have any questions, feel free just to shout them out, and Beth would be happy to answer them.
Beth, this is Sarah. I just want
Sarah.
to thank you for mentioning the gratitudes. One of the things that we used to do, even just in our house when my girls were growing up, was to write down 3 gratitudes every day. And we used our giant bathroom mirror and dry erase markers because they'll wipe right off with a Kleenex or a paper towel. And we would write across the top of the mirror, I'm grateful for, and then everybody had to add their 3 gratitudes before they could go to school that day. And it really does set the tone for your day, because if you start out your day thinking about what you're grateful for, it doesn't leave a lot of room for the negative things to start your day. So just to share a little bit, we actually would do it even when we traveled. Like if we were at a hotel, we would do it on the hotel room mirror, obviously clean up before we left. But we noticed one day that the housekeepers actually added their gratitudes to our list, which was really cool. So it can be infectious.
I love that
idea.
And it really is great. And we used to do gratitude journals for each of the cabins as well. And so with that, the book would be left, and each night our counselors would get the kids to write in them, and then that book would be left for the summer in that cabin, even though the campers switched every week. So they could go back and read others as well. And it is a really powerful tool. And I find that if it's something we can get them started on in the beginning, and as I said, going back and having staff read what they had written over the summer, like whenever there was a really down day, I watched the energy change. I watched things shift in the circle of staff as they would giggle and they would share with each other, oh, look what I wrote here, and all of that. So it really was very powerful. And keeping staff morale high, especially when they're working so hard, and in many of your camps harder than in other camps, is a really important tool to do. So I really thank you for sharing that, and I love the idea of writing it on the bathroom mirror. Tara, what I said was being wanted feeds the ego and being valued feeds the soul. Do you want me to I can type it in there for you so that we can put that in there too. But that was one of the questions I saw in the chat. Are there other questions you folks have for me? Tyler, I'm really sorry. I'm probably taking your job.
Not at all. You're doing exactly what is great. Feel free, folks, just to jump right in.
Beth, I just wanted to share also Sarah. So I don't do the 3 gratitudes a day, but I started this. You can get them anywhere. It's called One Line a Day, and for 5 years. And so each day there's 5 different segments for January 1st. And so you go through the whole year and you write down. And for this purpose, you could write down something you're grateful for, and then you kind of see how you grow each year. It's been super helpful if, going through difficult times, writing things that, like you said, mistakes are okay, writing things that were frustrating that day and realize a year later you forgot completely what it was. So in addition to the gratitude, this has been super helpful. The first year was tough because I couldn't read anything, but the second year was nice because I could see I didn't even think about that and haven't thought about it since. So I just wanted to share that as well.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I am grateful. I will put that in my gratitude journal from both of you tonight. Other things I can answer for you. I gave you a lot of proactive advice and not much reactive. And so I think I'd like to close, if you don't have more questions, with letting you know that when things hit the fan, and they inevitably will, and if they don't at your camp, then next year you get to run a presentation on how you pulled that off. But what I would do in my situation, in my camp, we were a smaller camp, probably 120 kids, about 70, 80 staff members, all told, with everybody in. And when I could feel those senses of people getting grumpy, when I could tell they were sort of butting heads with each other, when they were short with one another, when they didn't have that kind of patience for each other. One of the best things that ever happened to me, and I have to this day no idea who put it on my fridge, but I had fridge poetry in my cabin. And I walked in one day and there was a phrase there that has stuck with me forever. I gave it to the person who took over from me. She has given it to the person who took over from her. And in fridge poetry, it said, watch and listen, sit still and see. And I have no idea where it came from. I have a suspicion, but I don't honestly know. And what I do, so I'm going to put this in here, watch and listen, sit still and see. And I would sit at the back of my camp situation, wherever I happened to be at the time. So if it was in the dining hall during a meal, I would sit sort of quietly in the back and just watch and listen and sit still and really see what was happening, or at the back of a campfire, or go into a camp-wide game and just watch and listen. And doing that rather than jumping in and trying to fix things made a huge difference for me. Gathering that kind of information from key staff members I knew would tell me what's happening. And of course, you've built in all those support systems all the way through. So you've got head counselors, if you have those, or unit heads, or every camp's got different names, but they all sort of mean the same thing. Counseling staff, leadership team. You have those people who know to come and tell you when things are a little bit off, when people need a little bit extra more appreciation, when people need to vent, when people need, those sorts of things. And I would just take those moments to just stop and watch. And when I told my staff about this once, they thought wondered if it was kind of creepy that I sat and watched them all the time, but it really was a very valuable thing. Somebody has asked me to explain alumni notes. So they were read for the future staff, yes. So they were written by so for example, My camp did not run in 2020. We ran virtually, but we weren't able to open in person. So if we had been on site in person, the staff members who were not returning for 2021. So we hired many university students for our summer staff programs. So say they graduated university, they were moving on to full-time work. They knew they weren't coming back for the summer of 2021. So I would ask them to write a letter to the staff of 2021. So they would put in all of their thoughts, all of their dreams, all of their hopes. They'd put in often very, little anecdotes from their time at camp. But the first year that we started it, it was a little choppy. It was, short. And now the alumni letters get so long, we have to tell them you can only keep it to 2 pages because there's so much they want to share and there's so much they want people to hear from them. But the advice that they've given, we had them in our fireside chats. I sat on the bench in front of the fire and I would read them, and it was almost impossible for me not to get choked up every time I read them because they were so sincere and they had such amazing things that they wanted to say, like, live in the moment. Don't miss those little special moments with your campers. Don't worry about this kind of stuff. And they'd list all of it. It's not important. Here's what's important. Here's what I'm going to miss about not being at camp. The alumni letters were written by staff for staff, but I don't know why you couldn't send them to campers as well or have them read to the campers. That's a lovely thought. I just did it as a way to sort of connect the staff from year to year and get them to think about the legacy that they wanted to leave behind. And people were so honored when they were asked to write an alumni letter, and then every alumni letter I got came with this little note saying, thank you so much. It took me a month. I've written it 14 times. I've made so many edits, because they wanted to get it so perfect and just right. But I think doing, in the question, Katie, I think if you took alumni letters and read them to the campers, that could also be an incredibly meaningful experience if they could hear from the people who went before and weren't able to come back. You could also do alumni videos and use technology if that's something that you wanted to do. That might be really neat for them to get those messages as well. Good. Contact them all, but make sure, Millie, that you give them lots of time, because they do take it very seriously. So you can't give them like 2 or 3 days because they'll lose their minds. But I have all the alumni letters ever written, and I keep saying that I'm going to put them together in a book and sell them as a fundraiser to our camp people. And I really have to do it, but it involves me contacting all of the authors of all of these letters and asking permission. But they really are a special thing. Any other questions I can answer for you? Very cool. And yes, you could have people certainly do it from, lots of older ones as well, but I always choose just from the year before. So that way I know the vast majority of returning staff will know who is talking about it. Graduating campers doing that for others, also very, very cool. No, I hadn't thought of it, and wow, I wish I had. Great idea. But lots of information that can get passed on, and I think then they begin to think about what they want to be remembered for in their time at camp. Okay.
Well, if there aren't any further questions, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Beth so much. I took away so many helpful tips, and I can just see through the chat and everyone's face and just the nodding of the heads of how the information just landed perfectly at the right time. I think especially in this world right now, I think we took a lot of good information that we're not only using camp, but I think just in our everyday practice that I think will be valuable to everybody. Before everyone does sign off, there is a little kind of session eval. If you just kind of click that before, and Brian's going to launch that now. But thank you again, Beth, so much.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. And thanks everybody
really
for attending tonight.
And I thank you for your attention and for all the great work that you do. I'm so honored to just be a little tiny part of this great conference. And I wish you all the best for a very wonderful, healthy 2021 camp season. So thank you very much.